Letter 24. The Call of God, a Sign of Predestination. To the same person. You are quite right to consider the design with which God has inspired you as one of the greatest graces. It is the surest sign of the predestination of a soul by God when He calls it to His divine service. On this, not only its eternal salvation depends, but even temporal happiness, since experience proves that peace and true contentment in this world can only be found in the service of God. Besides, the depravity of the times is so great that it is very difficult to serve God perfectly out of religion. It costs so much to serve God in the world that people often lose courage and give up their good intentions. You must, therefore, thank our Lord without ceasing for the gratuitous grace He has given you, in preference to so many others who are lost in the world, while leading in it a life full of sorrow and disappointment. In the second place, you must trust in the goodness of God, and firmly hope that the design with which He has inspired you, He will bring to a successful conclusion. It is often for our greater advantage that He defers the accomplishment of our most holy desires. His providence can, by hidden but infallible means, cause things to succeed in spite of every obstacle, even when success seems absolutely impossible. God often allows His work to be thwarted in order to make the exercise of His power more striking, and to show us that He is absolute master of all, and that, as without Him we can do nothing, so with His assistance we shall be able to accomplish what appears impossible in our eyes. In the third place, you must resign yourself entirely to whatever is the will of God, telling Him frequently that you wish to depend on Him for everything, and that you will have no other will but His. In this way, when anything happens to cross your apparently most just desires, you must before all make the sacrifice of them, and then remain in peace, for nothing is so opposed to the Spirit of God and to the marks of His grace than interior distress produced by a too great eagerness for even the best and holiest things. Moderate this indiscreet zeal, this too impetuous impulsiveness, and direct all your efforts to the fulfillment of the holy will of God in all things, renouncing your own will, however holy and reasonable it may appear to you. There is truly no solid virtue nor true sanctity apart from an entire resignation to and acquiescence in the will of God. If you feel an occasional repugnance to submit yourself to what God ordains, you should go to Him at once interiorly by prayer, and implore Him to subject your will to His in all things, and to give you strength to overcome your repugnance and your self-love, which desires its own satisfaction in even the holiest things. Nevertheless, as it is God's rule that we should do all in our power to cause the good desires with which He has inspired us to succeed, this is what you ought to do. First, frequent the sacraments as often and as well as you can. Second, live in a great purity of conscience by avoiding the slightest fault that might keep God at a distance from you. Third, every day at your convenience, spend some time in spiritual reading, which will take the place of meditation when you are unable to make it. Fourth, during the course of the day, raise your mind and heart to God as often as possible, especially when you experience pain, weariness, disappointment, or any repugnance. Offer them to Him as a continual sacrifice. In this way you will obtain constant fresh graces and heavenly inspirations, to which it is of infinite importance that you should be faithful, because it is particularly to this fidelity that God usually imparts His greatest gifts, and above all, that of perseverance. Letter 25. God only desires what we are able to give. To the same person. The sort of martyrdom you are suffering will, if you endure it with patience and perfect resignation, be very pleasing to God, for all perfection consists in conforming your will entirely to the will of God in all things. That is to say, that you must never will anything but what God wills. Now it is of faith that God wills everything that happens to us except sin, because with the exception of sin, Nothing happens in this world but by the hidden dispensations of Providence. This taken for granted, I cannot understand why you should suffer so much at the postponement of your sacrifice, since it is God who puts obstacles to it, and thus shows you that he only requires of you the desire to make it, until such time as he himself gives you the means and power to do so. But beware lest, since we always try to gratify our own will in all things, this inability should wound your self-love, make you lose interior peace, and cause all sorts of troubles. It is a sure sign that we are seeking rather to indulge our own self-love than to please God, when we prefer our own will to his. For if we only desired to do this holy will, we should always be content and tranquil with this thought: God only requires of me what I am able to give him, and that is the desire to consummate my sacrifice, and according to his will this desire should be quiet, peaceful, and submissive to all the designs of his divine providence. But suppose I should never be able to accomplish my holy desires, very well, that would prove to me that God does not require it, and I should be satisfied to do his holy will, because it would then be obvious that God did not wish for the sacrifice itself, but only that I should be willing to make it. It was thus that God acted with regard to Abraham, whose generous readiness to sacrifice his son Isaac he rewarded as though the sacrifice had been consummated. It has been the same with many of the saints who had a very strong desire for martyrdom without being able to carry it out. God, not permitting nor desiring the actual sacrifice, is satisfied with the sacrifice of desire, which in his sight is the same thing. But suppose that in consequence of this I am obliged to live in the world, what will become of me? These are vain fears put into your mind by the devil to make you lose the peace of your soul. You must abandon yourself entirely to God and put your whole trust in him. He is powerful enough to make you stand firm in the world, and good enough to sustain you when it is by the arrangements of his providence that you live in it. You could not do better, therefore, than to practice recollection and abnegation in renouncing your own will in everything, but particularly in your too eager desires, however holy they may be. For this excessive vehemence and these restless struggles show much imperfection in self-love. These defects are still more clearly shown in the vexation and distress to which you give way after falling into certain faults. For these feelings are never produced by the love of God, which on the contrary conduces to peace, but by a discontented self-love and a secret pride stung by the sight of your own imperfections. A soul that is truly humble, instead of entertaining these useless and dangerous feelings, will, after a fall, humble itself gently and tranquilly before God, without any uneasiness on account of it. It will feel sorry without anxiety, and beg forgiveness without disturbance, and even thank him for preventing it falling into greater sins.